They were undefeated. For nearly half a century, the Mongols had thundered across the world like an unstoppable force of nature. Cities burned, empires collapsed, kings fled or died. From China to Eastern Europe, no army had ever truly stopped them in open battle. And then, on a dusty plain in Palestine in the year 1260, something extraordinary happened. For the first time in history, the Mongols were decisively defeated. This is the real story of the Battle of Ain Jalut, the clash that shattered a myth, saved a civilization, and quietly changed the course of world history. For generations, Mongol terror traveled faster than their horses. Under Genghis Khan and his successors, the Mongol Empire became the largest contiguous empire the world has ever known. Their armies were disciplined, fast, and terrifyingly efficient. Horse archers rained death from afar. Feigned retreats lured enemies into traps. Entire cities were wiped out to enforce obedience through fear. Resistance was usually pointless. By the mid-13th century, the Mongols had already crushed the Abbasid Caliphate. In 1258, Baghdad, once the jewel of the Islamic world, fell. Its libraries burned, its people were slaughtered, the Caliph himself was executed. The shockwave rippled across the Middle East. If Baghdad could fall, nothing was safe. After Baghdad, the Mongols pushed west. Under Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, Mongol armies swept through Persia and into Syria. Aleppo fell, Damascus surrendered. Crusader states, watching from their castles, chose neutrality over annihilation. The Mongols now stood at the edge of Egypt, and Egypt mattered. It was the last major Muslim power in the region, wealthy, populous, and strategically vital. If Egypt fell, the Mongols would control the entire eastern Mediterranean. Europe, North Africa, and Mecca itself would lie exposed. Everyone expected the same outcome. Everyone except the Mamluks. The Mamluks were not kings by birth. They were former slave soldiers, purchased as boys, trained in war, and forged into one of the most disciplined military elites of the medieval world. Through a unique system, these enslaved warriors had seized power for themselves and ruled Egypt. Their leader in 1260 was Sultan Qutuz, a hardened warrior with personal reasons to hate the Mongols. As a child, he had fled Mongol invasions that destroyed his homeland. When Mongol envoys arrived in Cairo demanding submission, Qutuz made his answer unmistakable. He had the envoys executed. In Mongol tradition, killing envoys was an unforgivable insult, an act that demanded annihilation. War was now inevitable. But fate intervened. In the summer of 1260, news reached Hulagu Khan that the great Khan, Mongke, had died. Mongol law required major leaders to return east for the election of a new ruler. Hulagu withdrew the bulk of his army. Yet, he left behind a force he believed was more than enough. At its head stood Kitbuka, a seasoned Mongol general, fiercely loyal and utterly confident. Though outnumbered, Kitbuka trusted the Mongol way of war. No army had ever beaten them before. Why should this one be different? The Mamluks marched north from Egypt. Alongside Qutuz was his most brilliant commander, Baibars. Aggressive, clever, and tactically daring, Baibars understood Mongol psychology and their weaknesses. The two armies met near a place called Ain Jalut in the Jezreel Valley. Rolling hills, open ground, perfect terrain for Mongol cavalry. Or so it seemed. The battle opened as many Mongol victories had before. Mamluk forces advanced, then suddenly retreated. To Kitbuka, it looked familiar. A fleeing enemy was a defeated enemy. The Mongols charged, and that was the mistake. The retreat was a trap. Baibars led the Mongols into narrow terrain, flanked by hidden Mamluk forces. Suddenly, horns sounded. Mamluk cavalry surged from the hills. Arrows darkened the sky. For the first time, Mongol horsemen found themselves surrounded. Kitbuka fought ferociously, refusing to retreat. Even as his army crumbled, he charged again and again, leading from the front. But the momentum was gone. When the Mongols attempted their own feigned retreat, normally a deadly maneuver, the Mamluks did not pursue blindly. They held formation, they countered, they adapted. This was something the Mongols had not faced before, an army that had learned their tricks. As the battle reached its breaking point, the Mamluk center began to falter. At that moment, Sultan Qutuz did something extraordinary. He rode forward, removed his helmet, and shouted a rallying cry to his soldiers, invoking faith, survival, and vengeance for the fallen cities of Islam. It worked. The Mamluks surged. The Mongol line collapsed. Kitbuka was captured alive. According to chroniclers, he refused to beg. He warned his captors that Mongol vengeance would come, but it never did. Kitbuka was executed. The myth of Mongol invincibility died with him. Ain Jalut was more than a battlefield victory. It was a psychological earthquake. For decades, rulers had surrendered to the Mongols without a fight. Now the world knew the truth. They could be beaten. Strategically, the consequences were immense. The Mongols never conquered Egypt. Their westward expansion stopped. The Islamic world survived, politically, culturally, and religiously. And the Mamluks emerged as the dominant power of the eastern Mediterranean, later crushing the last Crusader strongholds and ruling Egypt for centuries. But history is rarely clean. Only days after the victory, Sultan Qutuz was assassinated, likely on Baibars' orders. Baibars took the throne and became one of the greatest rulers of the medieval Islamic world. Power changed hands, empires shifted, but the outcome of Ain Jalut remained. The Battle of Ain Jalut reminds us that history does not always turn on numbers or reputation. It turns on preparation, on adaptation, on leaders willing to stand when everyone else expects them to fall. The Mongols were unstoppable until they weren't. And in one decisive moment, on a quiet plain in 1260, the future of the Middle East and perhaps the world changed forever. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the battles that shaped our world, subscribe to the channel for more cinematic history stories. History is not just what happened, it is why we are here.